All right, everybody, this video is long overdue. Books with marginalized characters coming up. Okay, hey everybody, welcome to Book Talks with Miss Thomas. Thanks for coming. I can't wait to talk about some of these characters. I've been planning this video for a few weeks now, and I do apologize. I wanted to be outside, but my neighbor is mowing. Hopefully that's not too much of a background distraction. I read this book, or actually I listened to the audiobook, and I loved it. And it's actually what spurred the idea of this video. And that book is called The Banned Bookshop of Maggie Banks by Shauna Robinson. And I loved that book. I listened to the audiobook and it was just so fun. And that is the story of Maggie. And Maggie is this girl who goes to Bell River to help out her pregnant friend who is part owner of a bookshop. The town is sort of run by this tyrant named Edward Bell, who is this super uptight guy, and he's got this relative who is like a famous bell, and there's this museum about the bells, and he's just, I don't know, he's really uptight. And so he and Maggie, of course, clash right away, and he doesn't think Maggie is fit to be working in the bookshop in his town. He's somewhat of an owner. Her friend that's pregnant is part owner, but he has like a larger share, and so he thinks that gives him the right to just dictate everything that goes on in the whole town. And he sends this employee assistant of his named Malcolm to spy on Maggie, but Malcolm and Maggie end up forming their own unique friendship. And I don't know, I just really loved it. I love the characters. I loved the humor of Maggie. You know, she's kind of a screw up, but she's also really smart and lovable, and it was a fun book. Now, the reason that that particular book got me thinking about this video is because Maggie is Black and so is Malcolm. And they have a conversation about what it's like to love books, but how they wish that in high school they'd read more books about people who look like them. And in that particular passage of the book, they were talking about Toni Morrison. And we do teach Toni Morrison. I'm a high school teacher. And so we do teach a couple of books, you know, that are diverse. I try really hard, but I want to validate the conversation that Maggie and Malcolm were having, because I do think that's a really important conversation to have as an English teacher, and for people to have and to consider is, are all people being recognized in the classroom, in the libraries, in the book discussions, in life? And so I don't know, it got me thinking a lot. For example, generally speaking, 9th grade is like identity, and 10th grade is world literature, but 11th grade is American literature. And I love teaching 11th grade, but I have certain go-tos that I really like. Catcher in the Rye, The Great Gatsby, and guess what? They're both written by white guys. So it's important, I think, for me especially, to say to myself, okay, I love these books, but I may need to just pick one and then make sure I represent other American authors as well. And I will be teaching 11th grade next year. So I'm thinking I'm gonna do A Lesson Before Dying, because that one is Ernest Gaines, and it's told from the perspective of a Black man. And then Catcher in the Rye would be, you know, the white perspective. And then Amy Tan. I love Amy Tan, but we used to have an Amy Tan book. I can't remember the name of it. And I kept saying, I know I saw this book in the book room. Where did this book go? I haven't seen that book in the book room. I don't know if we just ran out or what happened, but there is a really good short story by Amy Tan called Mother Tongue. And I think it's important to have that representation in there. And then, I don't know, let's see, there's There's Just Mercy is also one that's become recently available to 11th grade lit, American lit. And there was Funny and Farsi, which I taught in 12th grade, but there was some debate. Is that 11th grade or 12th grade? Because it's a girl who comes from Iran to America. So is it American lit because it's the American experience, or is it 12th grade lit? I think it was deemed 12th grade lit, and so I taught it in 12th grade. But the point is, I do really appreciate in the banned bookshop of Maggie Banks, the conversation between Maggie and Malcolm, where they talked about the importance of representing all types of people in the classroom. And it just got me thinking that, and I thought, you know what, I want to do a video about that as well. So I hope that I don't offend anyone or say something, wrong. I am, obviously telling my perspective, which is from a white woman, but I want to show the different perspectives out there too, and that they have validity. So I definitely recommend the banned bookshop of Maggie Banks. And another thing about that book that I want to say is really funny is that Maggie ends up having these satirical book club discussions where authors come in and they do these funny performances based on their books. And so it was like she just starts this really fun little literary group. And it was just, I don't know, there was so much in the book I highly recommend. I'm not doing it justice. You've got to go find it for yourself. It's a good one. Mother-Daughter Murder Night. I did recommend in another video, but I want to tell you that was a really good book. And the characters in that book were marginalized, some of them for different reasons. So there's this girl, and she is wrongly accused or becomes a prime suspect in a murder. And she's a young girl, and she was working on like a boat when this man was killed in the water near the boats. And the girl is, I believe, just a teenager, a high school student, but it is mentioned in the book that she is mixed. She has a white mother and a brown father. The father's not in the book, so I don't know the specifics. But I know the mother mentions that she feels her daughter is being misjudged and mistreated by one police officer in particular because of her skin color. The mother is white and her mother is white, but I think her mother, you could argue, and it would be a tough argument, but I will argue that she is a bit marginalized because she's older. And I can tell you, I'm in my 50s and I'm starting to feel a little bit invisible sometimes too, so I get it. And the grandmother, the older woman, she was this boss babe and she was used to getting her way and she was like a force to reckon with in, I think, real estate. But she has cancer and she's feeling very weak and tired and she doesn't want anyone to know that. So she comes to stay with her daughter and her granddaughter so that she can feel vital again. But when she realizes that her daughter is being mistreated by the police, she becomes really determined to find the real killer and to clear her daughter's name and to clear her granddaughter's name and to protect her granddaughter from the discrimination. And it also just seems to bring the vitality back for her. It makes her feel important. She has a mission and she's just all in. And she ends up getting her daughter and her granddaughter on board. And it was a fun book about 3 generations of women. But definitely one large premise of the book is that the granddaughter is being marginalized by the police because she looks different than her mother and grandmother. And I think that grandmother feels marginalized perhaps because of her age. And so that makes her more motivated to get involved in this murder investigation. But it was a really good book. None of the books in this video are not good. These are all books I highly recommend. Mango, Mambo, and Murder was a really sweet, cozy mystery about a woman named Miriam, who is a Cuban American. And so she lives in, I want to say Miami. Hold on. Well, I didn't write in my notes where she lives, but she lives somewhere hot. I think it's Miami. And her husband gets this job, so they move back to Miami, and they have to live near his family. And his mom, Miriam's mother-in-law, is a real pill, and she makes a lot of microaggressions about Miriam being Cuban. And Miriam is trying to raise her son, Manuel, to be bilingual and to, honor and appreciate his Cuban culture and his American culture. And the mother-in-law just, takes little digs at that throughout the book. And it's a struggle. The struggle is real for her to raise her son with an appreciation for his heritage and for his American father's culture. And it was just something that I really enjoyed, but it was also just a really fun, cozy mystery. So I was definitely interested in that. And Miriam, the main character, she does a cooking show. She talks about cooking, and as she's talking about cooking and preparing dishes, she's peppering it with stories about her Cuban heritage. So that was a really fun book told from the perspective of a Cuban American. I love Dial A for Aunties, and there are 3 books now in that series, and they're all just so much fun. And so the one I most recently read is The Good, the Bad, and the Aunties. And in that one, it's Medi. So Medi and her husband, Nathan, they celebrate the Chinese New Year. They go for their honeymoon to celebrate the Chinese New Year in Jakarta. And the aunties and the mother show up in Jakarta, and they get mixed up in a whole mess. But those are fun, cozy mysteries with a lot of family and heritage. And those are just really fun books about the Indo-Chinese Asian culture. They're just so fun. And one thing about The Good, the Bad, and the Aunties that I especially enjoyed was the play on idioms. And I can tell you, not from my teaching experience, but my graduate school experience, I did study, ELL, which is the English language learner, and what it's like to be in an English-speaking environment if English is not your first language. And I studied in grad school. Idioms are hard. Idioms are really challenging for people who aren't a part of that language, naturally, if this isn't their first language. And that was very true in the book. There was one scene in particular where this really snotty teenager says to the aunties, don't F with me. And the aunties say, why do you call us perverts? We're not perverts. And it's just really cute and funny. Again, it is a secular book, so the F word does appear in the book, but it's mostly clean and it's a lot of fun. And I especially liked, learning about the family and the women in the Indo-Chinese Asian culture. So any of the Dial A for Aunties books are great, but the one I most recently read was The Good, the Bad, and the Aunties. Counterfeit by Kirstin Chen is another one that I highly recommend. And that one plays with stereotypes in particular about Chinese women. Ava Wong is a lawyer in the United States when her friend Winnie Fang comes to visit her, and she's immediately, impressed with Winnie Fang's designer handbag and fancy clothes. And come to find out, Winnie has this little counterfeit scheme going where she buys fake handbags and takes them to the designer retailers, the stores, and returns the counterfeit bag for the refund. And it's quite a scheme that she's got going. And so she tries to bring in her friend Ava. And I really just appreciated the friendship between the women, but the way they sort of played with the stereotypes about them. They would go into the stores, at least Winnie would go into stores and buy, these designer handbags. And sometimes the people in the stores had stereotypes against Winnie that Winnie used to her advantage. So that was a really interesting book too. I highly recommend Counterfeit. And the last one I'm going to throw in here, I don't think this character, Maddie Montgomery, is in any way marginalized. I mean, she just comes out swinging. She can speak for herself and stand up for herself. But I did really enjoy Murder is a Piece of Cake. And if anything, some of the people tried to marginalize her because she's very pretty. There was a lot about pretty girls being marginalized in this book. Her friend April is the police sheriff, and both of them are condescended to and mistreated because they're pretty women. And Maddie, she is a very successful business owner, but she's also an Instagrammer, and she's very skilled with, social media. And so that's sort of minimalized and poo-pooed. And for that reason, I think she was marginalized. I really enjoyed all of these books that I mentioned in today's video, and I highly recommend each of them. And if you know of any good books where, you know, the character in particular, or if there is a character in the book that we don't call enough attention to, definitely put that in the comments, because I want to read that. I think it's important to read books about people from all walks of life with all kinds of different identities. So I recommend these books. I think it's important to read different books about different people. That's what books are there for, right? They're supposed to help us see the world from different perspectives, and what a great way to learn and grow. So I hope you're out there and you're reading and you're having a great time. I'll be back next week. Bye for now.